Hey, this is Mike from Run Testers. This is the brand new Brooks Glycerin 22, a shoe that we did give you an early look at the end of 2024. That was from myself and Tom, and now Nick and Kieran is joining us on our full multi-tester review. First, we will whip around what is new in the Glycerin 22, how it compares to the 21. Then we'll get to our running thoughts and let you know whether the Brooks Glycerin 22 is a shoe to get excited about in 2025. So here's your quick breakdown of the key Brooks Glycerin 22 stats. Let's start with price, and the Glycerin 22 costs £165 or $165, giving it the same price as the Glycerin 21. The 22 comes in medium and wide fit options with the same 10mm drop and stack heights as the Glycerin 21. It does now weigh heavier than its predecessor. At the upper, there's a new double jacquard knit one to offer plenty of padding, including at the heel, to boost overall comfort. At the midsole, Brooks swaps its DNA Loft V3 cushioning technology for its new DNA tuned one that first appeared on the Glycerin Max. That now puts larger cells at the heel to keep things plush at the back and smaller ones at the forefoot to provide a more responsive feel. The outsole now includes more rubber, particularly at the forefoot, to make the Glycerin 22 more durable than the 21 and ensure it's one that's still going to be a good fit for long runs.
The fit of the Glycerin 22 was all good for me in my normal running shoe size. Got a UK 9 here, which is a US 10 for Brooks. It's the same size I've used for the Glycerin ever since I think the Glycerin 14 might have been the first one I tested, and it fits me very well in the same way all those other shoes have. Got a nice amount of room in the toe box for a big cushion shoe like this. I like a fair bit of room in the toe box there for a nice roomy, relaxed fit. Good hold around the heel and midfoot. Lots of padding at the back of the shoe for that classic step-in Brooks comfort, but it's not overbearing, or it didn't irritate my Achilles at all. So yeah, all good in my normal size in the Brooks Glycerin 22.
So I'm running my regular Brooks 8.5 UK shoe size here for the tests, and overall I'd say the fit is good. It's pretty disappearing on the foot. There's just about enough length in the toe box. It's quite kind of wrapping and sort of hugging. It's not too tight, good security. It's a little bit narrow maybe across here. It's not tight, but I just notice it holds you really well, but it is a sort of snuggish fit. But back in up here, I get great lockdown across the midfoot. Do get a bit of tongue bulging here as these laces kind of separate, and I have to sort of adjust those sometimes to make sure it's properly secure. But these nice padded tongues sort of take the edge off any lace pinch, and I can lace them down nice and tight without having any troubles. Heel collars, all of that back heel package fits really nicely. I had no slipping at all, no unwanted movement in the shoe. Just about roomy enough, and overall I would recommend going true to size in these.
So fit for me overall has been very good in the Brooks Glycerin 22. This is what Brooks is very good about. It's a no-nonsense fitting shoe, and what it's putting around your shoe is something that's going to feel very comfortable, very supportive, and very well padded as well, and that's kind of been my experience with the Glycerin 22. You look at the toe box, it's roomy without being overly generous, and there's just enough room to make it a good shoe to want to run long in. The midfoot hold is very similar, I would say. You've got these kind of spongier laces and kind of well padded tongue, so you're not getting that kind of undue pressure on the top of your feet. And I quite appreciate the kind of additional kind of internal padding you're getting around the heel collar. It adds a little bit more kind of support there, and no irritation from the kind of heel collar around the Achilles area either as well. So for me, I've had it in a UK size 8. That's my standard size. I would go true to size in this shoe. Obviously, Brooks will offer a wider fitting shoe, so if that's something you want, then, I think, you have that option there. But I think in its standard fit, I think for a lot of people, particularly if someone like me who's got skinny feet, that kind of naturally kind of broader feel and the standard kind of width option will be fine for most people. So for me, I would go true to size in this shoe. It's very much a Glycerin shoe in terms of that fit, very comfortable, very snug fitting, and plenty of padding in and around the shoe from toe, midfoot up to the heel collar as well.
So the fit for me in the Glycerin 22, very, very good. I'm a size 8 in the UK. The Glycerin has always been a line that has a pretty standard fit. There's plenty of space in the forefoot before my big toe. The upper is comfortable and quite relaxed. So it's definitely a shoe that is designed for comfort above all else. There's loads of padding around the ankle collar as well. And it's quite easy to get a nice lockdown fit with it. So I definitely stay to my size in this shoe as a runner with a fairly average width foot.
So I've run around 60 kilometers in the Brooks Glycerin 22. I've long been a fan of the Glycerin line as just a really solid cushioned daily trainer. It was a very, very comfort focused shoe early on, and now as lots of other shoes have gone well beyond the stack height on the Glycerin, it's now almost more of a kind of a cushioned daily trainer, and it does that job pretty well. I was expecting, fairly big update with the Brooks Glycerin 22, and that really hasn't been the case. When I've run in the shoe, it feels a lot like the Glycerin 21. Like with this new midsole, I thought, well, will it be kind of a fusion of the Glycerin 21 and the Glycerin Max? And really, it just feels a lot more like the Glycerin 21 to me, because it's the geometry of the shoe that really, tells with the ride feel as opposed to the kind of foam here. So on the Glycerin Max, you've got that lower drop, much higher stack, kind of slightly more rocker design, and then this has the classic 10mm drop. It's much more in line with the look and feel of the Glycerin 21, I would say, which is not a terrible thing. But if you were expecting, I think, a really big update here compared to the previous model, I don't think that's really what you've got here. But it is still a very enjoyable daily trainer to go out and use. Like, it's very solid, it's pretty stable for a neutral shoe, it's comfortable, it's cushioned, it's not especially versatile, but you can pick up the pace a little bit. It's kind of equivalent to its peers in this area, things like the Asics Gel Nimbus 27, that kind of thing, where you can run some slightly quicker runs, and maybe if you're a newer runner, it works quite well as that all-rounder style shoe. But if you have a rotation, it'll be the shoe that picks up your easy miles, long miles, that kind of thing. So I've done quite a lot of easy miles in it. I've done a 15-mile long run as well, and then some slightly faster stuff. But in general, it's just a shoe that kind of just sits there on your foot. It works better at slower paces with that high drop. I think if you start to push the pace a bit as a heel striker like myself, you start to get a little bit slappy sometimes, coming through quite hard on that forefoot. And, it is still comfortable, but it doesn't feel as good for those kind of faster runs as lots of other shoes, including other options in the Brooks rotation, like the Hyperion Max and that kind of thing. So the 15-miler I ran was, I think, just an absolutely horrible day, just a really bleak day, like really wet the whole way through, like raining the whole time, really cold as well. I managed to run through like a slushy, snowy field quite early in the run and drench my feet, which was not smart route planning on my part. But that's what the Glycerin is for. Like, it's that shoe that's just going to carry you through all weathers, all seasons, just rack up your easy miles in the shoe, and it just works. Like, it doesn't look like it's got a mark on it after all that running. The outsole grips pretty well in the kind of cold conditions we've had here. The midsole seems like it will last forever. It's a reasonably expensive shoe, but you're going to get a lot of miles out of it, and like I say, it does work well for those daily miles, but it's not really a ride that really gives you, the wow factor. Like, you're not getting a lot of squish here. Like, you don't really feel the changes in the midsole that much compared to DNA Loft V3. Like, it's still, a really well balanced midsole. It's, comfortable without being squishy or anything like that. You get a little bit of pop off the toes, but really it's just, a pretty neutral, balanced platform to push against and do your running in. So all round, it's very much more of the same, I think, with the Glycerin 22 compared to previous models. It's a really solid shoe, but not one that necessarily is going to, I think, win a whole load of new converts to the Glycerin line, but I think it should satisfy, previous fans of the line.
So I first had the Glycerin 22 on my feet a few months back on a visit to Brooks HQ here in the UK. That was at the same time that I got to test the new Glycerin Max with that new mega stack of DNA tuned foam. I only got to run up and down a little bit in the car park on a road, but it was intriguing as a taster, and the new foam felt pretty good underfoot. And now I've clocked 25 plus miles in the Glycerin 22. I have to say I haven't lost my enthusiasm for this shoe or the new nitrogen infused DNA foam. The foam lets Brooks designers tweak the density in different areas of the shoe, so you can get like a less dense foam under the heel for more cushion, more dense under the forefoot for more response. But more about the ride in a sec. Straight out of the box, the Glycerin 22 feels good on the foot, good step in comfort, relatively easy fit with an upper that hugs like a nice slipper. It's a fine line between the good kind of supportive hugging and too tight, and this one treads it really well. Now, despite the changes to the midsole foam, I think this still feels like a Glycerin, and I'd likely use it for the same kinds of runs that I would have done for the Glycerin 21. It's just got a bit more energy and liveliness underfoot from that new midsole foam. Now, it shoots for plush landings and responsive toe-offs, and I think it absolutely delivers that. It's not a bouncy, big energy, sort of super lively shoe, but I love the fact there's a control to it that comes with the energy. You get reliable landings from a kind of broad, stable platform that's more connected than the really massive stacked shoes we've got coming out. There's a balance of ground feel but ample protection. It's soft and a bit slipper-like, but in a really good way. It's just a really easy shoe to run in. It's giving me kind of Saucony Rise 17 vibes, but with a bit more energy. I've done lots of low and slow, easy miles, and it's taken the edge off the road without being soggy and sapping. I've done some progression miles up to around marathon pace, and it's handled all of those really well. I found it quite light and agile for the weight. It's not the most exciting ride, but it's one of those shoes that's got your back when you're kind of clipping along in an unshowy way, and I really like that. It's not a low stack shoe, but compared to the whopping great stacks we're now getting, it feels lower profile And that slightly more traditional feel kind of really suits me. Durability so far looks good too. Almost no signs of wear and tear from this shoe from the miles I've done so far.
So in terms of my running time in the Brooks Glycerin 22, I've done over 50k in this shoe now, and it's been very easy to get up to that running distance because, like the previous Glycerins, it's very comfortable, it's very protective, it's naturally a very stable shoe, and it has all the qualities of a Glycerin, which, you know, makes it a good long run shoe and a shoe to use at your more relaxed, easy running paces. Getting into the nitty gritty of it, the big change here is that midsole change, where you're getting that DNA tuned kind of midsole foam that we got on the Glycerin Max, and moving away from the DNA Loft V3 that we got in the Glycerin 21, which I think was, you know, very soft, very comfortable, I think very protective, all the qualities you'd want in a cushioned long run shoe. I just felt like it was a little bit dull. No, I wasn't compelled to spend a lot of time in that shoe, particularly when you look at the other cushion shoes in Brooks's range and outside of Brooks's range in this category. I think what that DNA Tune midsole foam does for me is really kind of elevate the ride that you're getting. I think the bounce feels a lot nicer. I feel that, you know, the way that it's structured in the shoe, I think particularly from a heel striker like me, you're getting a lot more of that foam at the heel. So when you sink or drop back at the heel, then you're getting something that's really protective at the back of the shoe. Then it kind of, you know, it flattens out a little bit, feels a little bit longer in the front of the shoe. And it just feels like, you know, you're not getting this kind of massive pronounced rocker in here, but I think what that kind of more elevated bounce that you're getting in the ride just helps you to roll through a lot nicer in this shoe. And I've just found when I've run longer in the Glycerin 22, it's felt like a nicer shoe to do. As I said, you know, it's still, you know, a very kind of stable shoe. It's still a very controlled shoe to run it in, but that ride just feels a lot nicer, a lot more enjoyable. The bounce feels a lot more pronounced, a lot more prominent. You know, you're not getting this super rockered ride, but I think what that bounce and the way that that can DNA tuned is structured in the midsole, it just, you know, makes for a shoe that rolls through nicer from heel to toe. Now, you know, it's not a super light shoe. The Glycerin shoes in general aren't, but I have found that I've been able to get up to kind of moderate paces in this, and it's felt comfortable to do that. I think in terms of sustaining that over longer distances, I think it's more of a challenge for me, but I do have found that kind of slightly upping the pace in this shoe compared to the previous Glycerin shoe has been a lot easier for me to do. Other qualities worth talking about, you know, we're looking at the outsole, and forgive me for my very muddy kind of outsole, but you know that is helping to create that more stable kind of feeling shoe, which, you know, the Glycerin is really known for. I do think you're going to get a lot of protection here. I have, you know, been a little bit off-road in this shoe, and it's been fine. I wouldn't say it's the grippiest outsole that I found on a kind of a shoe of this category, but I think in terms of what I'd expect to see from a Glycerin, in terms of that outsole grip, it's been all perfectly fine for me. So yeah, for me, I have definitely found the Glycerin 22 a nicer shoe to run in. Still the same types of runs, but I think there is a capability for me to run slightly quicker in this shoe. You're not running your faster pace in this. That's not what the Glycerin is about, but I do think the changes from the midsole foam, what that does to the actual, you know, feel of the shoe, not just in terms of changing the, you know, the density and the plushness and the bounce that you're getting from the foam, just how it sits in the shoe, I think is a real kind of important kind of thing to take away from the Glycerin 22. So yeah, for me, a very positive experience of Glycerin 22. Definitely felt like a more memorable shoe to run in compared to the Glycerin 21.
I've always been a pretty big fan of the Glycerin line, and when they updated the midsole foam to the nitrogen infused foam a couple of years ago, I really liked it. It's a solid daily cushion shoe that really ticks a lot of boxes. It's always had a lot of stability in it. Brooks is always designed shoes that are pretty stable, and as a result, it's a great shoe for people that either want a solid training shoe that has a lot of things that it can deliver, but also for beginners as well who want cushioning but also want that level of stability as well. This newest version with this new DNA tuned midsole foam, which is the same that you get in the Brooks Glycerin Max, it's not a big difference really from the previous version for me. In the Glycerin Max, it's a little bit softer because there's a bit more midsole foam in there, and you can feel that. There also seems to be a bit more of a rolling action in the Glycerin Max. I find it a bit more of a versatile shoe when it comes to those max cushion shoes. It's by no means a fast training shoe, but I definitely have been enjoying training for Valencia Marathon and doing some of my longer runs in that shoe at a nice comfortable pace. The Glycerin 22 is more of the same of what you'd expect from the standard Glycerin line. So the Glycerin and the Ghost, they're generally shoes that are designed for accessibility. A lot of people can use these shoes. You don't have to worry about them being too soft, being wobbly or anything like that. But equally, they're not really shoes that are designed to do a lot more. They're not versatile shoes. They're not shoes that are designed for faster training sessions or anything like that. They're just really good, solid shoes that are reliable. And the Glycerin 22 is more of the same. I've enjoyed running in this shoe, but it's not the most exciting shoe in the world. It's not like there's loads of bounce to this midsole foam. It's very much a sturdy, moderately cushioned midsole. Faster pace running in it. It's not really designed for that, but it when it comes to these sorts of cushion shoes, it's not bad. If you were a runner that maybe was looking for one pair of shoes and you were going for a race or something like that, and your aim was just to comfortably cross the finish line with a nice comfortable ride, this would be fine for it. And a lot of people I know do go for the Glycerin line just because it does tick a lot of those boxes. So I wouldn't say it's a particularly versatile shoe. I definitely wouldn't do any faster sessions in this shoe, just because it doesn't really give a lot back from it. But for most of my runs, my daily runs where I'm going out and doing 10, 15k and I'm running at about 5-minute kilometers, absolutely fine, no issues at all. Nowadays, there's a lot more shoes out there that sit in this same category that deliver a bit more. They give you a bit more bounce, a little bit more rolling action, but this doesn't really do that. It's very much your sort of standard, comfortable cushion shoe that has a nice bit of stability in it. The outsole I actually think is very good. There's a really thick layer of rubber on this outsole, and it's very good at grip as well. I run quite a lot on gravel tracks and public footpaths and things like that, and it works fine on those. There is a little bit of an exposed midsole, but the rubber is so thick that it's going to take quite a while to get down to that. So I think it's going to be a pretty durable shoe.
My verdict is you got a new foam here, but you got the same old Glycerin in many ways, and that's not really a bad thing. Like I say, it's a really good, dependable daily trainer. It's one that works for lots of runners, and it will continue to work for lots of runners. New foam is in there. You know, it feels good. It doesn't feel, I think, a lot different to the previous models of the shoe. So if you do have the Glycerin 21 or see that shoe in a really big sale, I wouldn't hesitate to go for that shoe. I think that's a really good shoe as well. And then this will be, you know, a nice model to upgrade to when it starts to appear in its sales as well. Like I say, for me, it's a shoe I'd put in the rotation as an easy day cushion shoe for picking up, you know, lots of mileage in all conditions, like I did. And yeah, it just works well for that, but it doesn't really have a lot of speed. I think can pick up the pace a little bit, but you're not really going to get, you know, a lot of versatility out of this if you are a runner who, you know, also has like faster, lighter shoes that you'd use for your speed workouts. Lots of shoes in this area these days. You might as well compare it to the Glycerin Max, which, you know, is a slightly different shoe because it has, you know, a much higher stack height. It has that rocker. It's quite a strange rocker I find on the Glycerin Max, where it's, you know, really sharp at the end of the run. And although I think, you know, it is a slightly livelier model sometimes at times than the Glycerin 22, like I'd probably use them for the same kind of purposes. Like I did do a faster long run in the Glycerin Max, and it didn't feel all that comfortable for that kind of use. Like it still feels like a pretty big shoe, and a shoe that for me is much more geared up for kind of easy day cruising and that kind of thing. So I think you can do those same kind of runs in the Glycerin 22 if you're not really bothered too much about the difference in geometry. If you really prefer a rocket shoe, obviously the Glycerin Max is a more rocket shoe and does that job well, but in terms of the price, I think you're going to get the same kind of performance out of the Glycerin 22, and it's a cheaper shoe, so I don't think you're getting a huge uplift in performance by going for the more expensive Glycerin Max, I would say. I think if you are someone who does like a high drop in their trainers, I think this is one of the best models on the market. You've got the Puma Velocity Nitro 3, which is a little bit less cushioned, but still a nice, comfortable shoe, and it's a lot cheaper. That's a really good daily trainer. Like I think if you're maybe a heavier runner, you'll probably enjoy the Glycerin 22 more. There's a bit more support and foam there, and it's a little bit more stable. And the Velocity Nitro 3 does run a bit narrow, but that is a solid, really good daily trainer for people who like a higher drop shoe. There's a Nike Pegasus 41 as well. Like I think I prefer the Glycerin 22 to the Pegasus. I think you've got a livelier foam in the Glycerin. The Pegasus is certainly a solid shoe. It's a bit lighter as well, but I think the Glycerin has a slightly nicer ride all round. And then you've also got the Asics Gel Nimbus 27, which I really liked when I was testing out recently. That's got a little bit more cushioning, and it's a slightly stiffer feel to it almost, which sometimes helps actually when you're trying to run a bit quicker. Another really good, comfortable, easy day option. You know, quite similar to the Glycerin. I think I probably slightly prefer the Asics Gel Nimbus 27 myself, but it's pretty close all round. They're both really good shoes, both quite similar to previous models as well. So both pretty solid options, but I think one that maybe stands out a little bit more is the Saucony Hurricane 24, which is a bit more rockered, has a really wide base. It's a nice stable shoe, but it's got quite a lively feel to it because of the foam Saucony has used in the midsole of that shoe, and that's a really nice easy day cruiser shoe, but does have a little bit of kind of pop when you're running fast. Again, all these shoes kind of fulfill a similar role. So really it would just come down to your preference in ride feel and what kind of drop you like, whether you like a rocker. I tend to like a rocker shoe myself and nothing too squishy and soft, but yeah, they all do really good jobs. And then there's the New Balance 1080 V14 as well, which I think is a bit lighter and nimbler than the Glycerin 22. I think probably a better cushioned daily trainer option if you are looking for one shoe to do everything, including faster runs. It has a nice rocker on that shoe as well. I think it ticks over a little bit more smoothly than the Glycerin, but I think you've maybe got a slightly more cushioned and stable option here in the Glycerin. So yeah, all round, I think it's a nice update to the shoe. I don't think it's changed massively compared to the previous models though, so I would look at the Glycerin 21 in a sale potentially. I do like the new foam on the shoes, but I don't think it's really massively changing the feel of them compared to DNA Loft V3. But the Glycerin 22 was a shoe I enjoyed running in. I think fans of the Glycerin will like it.
So my take on the Brooks Glycerin 22 is that this is a different Glycerin shoe, but in a lot of ways it's the same Glycerin that we know. And I think what I mean by that is that you are still going to use the shoe for the same types of runs. You know, it is still going to be a great long run shoe. It's still going to be a shoe that is going to be best for kind of easy to moderate paces. I think what I would say is that change in the midsole foam, what that's done to the ride overall just makes it a little bit nicer for me. You know, I didn't absolutely love the Glycerin 21. Wasn't my favourite Brooks shoe, but I think in terms of what's been changed here in the Glycerin 22, as I say, it still has all the hallmarks of a Glycerin, but it just injects a little bit of life, a little bit more enjoyment in that ride when you are running a little bit longer in. I do wish it was a little bit lighter, but I think everything else about the Glycerin is very much in essence still the same shoe. So I do think it is a better shoe. I think if you like the Glycerin, you like the ride of that shoe, then fine, I would be going for that. If you like the idea of a Glycerin shoe that's going to, I think, give you a little bit more pronounced bounce, think roll through a little bit nicer on those kind of same kind of paces, then I would be going for the Glycerin 22. I think this is a good upgrade on the previous Glycerin and a shoe that, you know, I've enjoyed spending more time in compared to the previous Glycerin shoe. So for me, I think the changes are positive. I said all the hallmarks of a Glycerin shoe here, very comfortable in terms of the upper department, very supportive, very naturally stable shoe. But I just think that change in the midsole just makes it a nicer shoe to do those types of runs that you would use the previous Glycerin shoes. So for me, I think a positive upgrade on the Glycerin 21. And I think the Glycerin 22 is a solid, cushioned kind of daily training performer that definitely veers towards that kind of easy paces, but can potentially be used for kind of slightly more moderate pace for some people as well too.
Verdict then, and if you watch the channel a lot, you'll know that I'm fond of shoes that offer a good balance of cushion and protection, but without being too soft, too sinky, too sort of sludgy, or putting too much shoe on the foot that are sort of overbuilt. And the Ride 17, the Pegasus 41 from Nike, the Puma Velocity Nitro, all in that kind of bracket. I think the Glycerin 22 joins that list, and I really rate it. I think this is a capable, versatile shoe that's nicely balanced. This isn't an Asics Gel Nimbus 27 soft. It's not a Brooks Glycerin Max kind of big stack soft. It's fans of that sort of really soft ride might find they want more cush for their easiest of runs. But I'll happily trade some of the top level plushness underfoot for a shoe that can go up through the gears. And the Glycerin 22 offers that. I think Brooks has made a good dependable daily trainer and definitely a shoe that can rival the likes of the New Balance 1080 V14, Saucony Ride 17 and other shoes in that bracket. For me, I've enjoyed my miles and it's a big thumbs up on the Glycerin 22. I wish it was slightly cheaper. I think it would really make it a true sort of contender. You know, one shoe that I've got in my mind that I'm wondering whether or not I'd pick this over is probably like the Nova Blast 5, which comes in a chunk cheaper.
So my verdict on the Brooks Glycerin 22, it's not a wow shoe. It's not a shoe that does a lot. It's just a very, very accessible shoe that really any runner can use. It's very stable. It's very comfortable to wear. If you're comparing it with some other shoes on the market, which are very much designed to give you energy return and bounce and things like that, it doesn't really do those things. It's just a reliable, solid shoe, which sits into that realm with the Brooks Ghost. So I think for many people, it's probably a shoe that would apply to maybe beginners or general runners that just want a reliable experience. I also think because that midsole is a little bit firmer than you'll find in some cushion shoes, it's probably better if you're a heavier runner as well, because you're not really going to compress that midsole foam as you will in some of the quite high stack cushion shoes. So yeah, I think it's a solid shoe. I think it definitely does what it says on the tin. If you know about the Glycerin line in the past, you're getting more of the same really. I don't think that midsole has massively changed from the previous version of the shoe, but it's still a solid, reliable shoe. There are other options out there which you might look instead of this. Things like the Triumph 22. I actually prefer the Brooks Glycerin 22 to the Triumph. I don't really like the Triumph 22 at all. It doesn't work for my running style. I much prefer the Brooks Glycerin 22. But for me, if I'm going to that cushion daily world, I'm probably more likely to go for something like the New Balance More V5, just because there's a bit more softness in it. It's a nicer rolling action, and I enjoy running in that shoe a lot more. Neither are versatile shoes, so if you're looking for versatility, there are better options out there. Something like the Saucony Ride range is probably a little bit better if you're looking for something that's got a bit more responsiveness and you can pick up the pace in it. But really, you can't go wrong with the Glycerin 22 if you want a solid, reliable shoe that is nice and stable and gives you a good level of comfort and cushioning.
Okay, so they have a multi-tester take on the Brooks Glycerin 22. Now, if you've got any questions about the shoe that we haven't covered in this video, do let us know in the comments. If there are other shoes you want to see this compared to, desperately do let us know about that as well. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.